G'day guys, welcome to our September user group, coming live here from Sydney, and we have something special on tonight because we have a few speakers. We have Chris Clement, we have JK, and we have Gabriel George. So tonight we have a few speakers. We have Chris, Gabe, and JK. How are you, boys?
Good, thanks. How about you?
Very good, thank you.
Great.
So what we have tonight is, if you go to the homepage of SSW, you will have a new live widget here, which will be fantastic. And you can see it there. Of course, you can still have a look at it in YouTube or Vimeo, whatever your player of choice is. But yeah, that's a great way of doing it. Right. Fantastic. So a little bit about the speakers tonight. Chris Clement is a software architect in Melbourne, and he is going to be talking about, let me have a look. He's got a fantastic talk. It's about Fluxor in C#. So this is replacing well-known Redux pattern that front-end developers use. And now when you're using Blazor WebAssembly, you have the ability to put your complex logic and your state in a nice little, nice front-end environment. And so this library, Fluxor, is the way to go. And Chris has been using this on a large project, and he's going to be talking about that. Now, after that, we have JK. And JK is going to be talking about entity framework for query tags and logging. So when you have a SQL server that is drowning, you need to know where are all these calls coming. If you're using Profiler and looking at all the traffic, you need to know where they're coming from. And so what you do is you use entity framework query tags, and that is going to be a good way of working out which application, where it's coming from. And finally, then we have Gabe. And Gabriel George will be talking about Angular and how to make it fast. Now, when a page gets really rich and there's a hell of a lot of components there, the page slows down and you're going crazy. What am I going to do? So Gabe will talk about how to render all those components and still have a very responsive page. So I'm really looking forward to that. Now, I have a little bit of news, so I'll run through the news, and then I want to talk about, I had a conversation with Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks earlier today, and it was about, Apple, Fortnite, Epic Games, and who was being fair and who was being unfair, and why are they going to, et cetera, et cetera. And he's going to give us a great summary of that conversation, because I thought this is fantastic. So we'll do that before we kick off the other speakers. So in terms of tonight, we've got all the guys from Canberra, Brisbane, and Melbourne news groups all on this chat. So you can put all your comments there and watch away, and we'll be monitoring all that. So news. What news do we have? Well, we have the best news imaginable, and that is .NET 5 RC1 is out, and we've been looking forward to this for a long time. So that's good to go. That is gold. There's just so much in here. It's incredible. Like the page itself, like you think, like this isn't like a normal release. That's why it's just endless and endless and endless and endless. I'm even the way through this, but what I should say is all these pages just link off to other things. So let's go to say app trimming. App trimming is a great thing in .NET 5. You'll notice that there's no 4 in this name anymore. But this basically takes out all the code that you're not using and makes this Fantastic. Now, ASP.NET Core, and we care about this a lot. You'll notice that hasn't dropped the name Core crazily, but that's because there was already another ASP.NET 5, and naming is hard, and there was lots of conversation about that, so they've kept the name. But yeah, there's lots of cool stuff in here. Just look at the performance. The Blazor performance really matters in the rendering. So you can see that the performance in RC5 is so much faster than you've been dealing with in the betas. So our guys are really happy about that. In addition, Blazor will only get faster with .NET 6. I know we're just talking about .NET 5 now, and we shouldn't talk about .NET 6, but .NET 6 does have a big feature coming called AOT, which is ahead of time compilation, and that allows Blazor to go way faster. So the future of Blazor is only going to get better and stronger. And likewise, this is a big release. And I will also mention the other guy, which is pretty important, and that is Entity Framework Core RC1. So this is great. This also keeps the name Core, which is a shame as well, but we basically know what that means. So if you have a look down here, lots of great stuff. Of course, the best thing around that we've been asking for a long time now is many-to-many support. And so you can see Entity Framework Core gets many-to-many support. So lots of good stuff. All right. So there is also NDC, the best conference around. We have 90 speakers there. Lots of fantastic speakers here. Ian Cooper is amazing. Dylan Beattie is amazing. We have Jason Taylor, one of the SSW guys. We've also got William Leonberg, another SSW guy. Oh, and JK, who's on tonight. You'll meet him, and you'll see if you like him. He's fantastic. We've got Damien Brady, awesome. Tiago Passos, Magnus Martinsson from Sweden. Yeah, it's amazing how many Aussies we have here, even though the conference is virtual now and you can have anyone from anywhere. So there's just enough talent in Australia to populate a conference like that. So we represent well with our population. So I'd like to hand over to Richard Campbell, who will just talk very quickly about just, I asked Richard earlier today, like, if you don't know the backstory, Fortnite, which is a massive game and making a lot of money, they broke the rules of the App Store and the Play Store and released their game Fortnite and said, you can buy stuff in there and not use, say, the Apple Store. And so, like all fights, this is about money. And those guys, well, both these companies make a lot of money, but nobody makes more money than Apple, the richest company in the world. And so they've gone ahead and violated the rules and predictably got in trouble. Apple always kicks people out of the store if they break the rules. And I should mention, like, you know, all these games like Fortnite, you can just play these for free, but of course a lot of people, especially kids, like to buy all these little things to make their experience better. There's also the concept, the negative concept, I guess, of pay to win. And so you can give yourself an advantage by buying all this stuff. And then Apple not only retaliated by kicking them out, just broke off the entire agreement. And so Fortnite could not release anything. Now, a lot of other developers out there on games rely on their gaming engine. And Richard will talk about that. And I just thought his summary was fantastic, and his theories are titillating. So I'll hand it over to Richard Campbell.
Hello, Adam. This is Richard Campbell coming to you from my home up on the coast in British Columbia, Canada. and was happy to get your question about what's been going on with Epic Games and Apple. So let's just dive right into it. The thing about Epic Games is they're the makers of Fortnite and a bunch of other games, but they also own the Unreal Engine, which is a 3D gaming engine used by a significant number of developers. And Epic Games had $4.2 billion in revenue in 2019 and was projecting $5 billion in 2020, and that includes the $400 million they made on Fortnite in April 2020 alone. Tim Sweeney is the CEO of Epic Games, and he's a billionaire. Fortnite made him a billionaire, and he's been spending a lot of the company money building out Epic Games and their store to try and compete with the likes of Steam. So starting back in June of 2020, Sweeney started complaining to the public and into the press at the time about how Apple and Google app stores are monopolies. And this ultimately crescendoed in August 13th this year when Epic Games added a direct payment option for Fortnite in violation of the App Store agreements. And that very same day, of course, then Apple and Google pulled Fortnite from the store. That only makes sense. They were in violation of the agreement. But also on that day, Epic then filed a lawsuit against both Apple and Google separately, declaring the monopoly. And their brief was 60 pages. So this wasn't actually something you throw together in a single day. And also on that day, they released a video, which was a play on Apple's 1984 video from the Super Bowl that introduced the Mac. So again, clearly this was a planned move by Sweeney and Epic. And Sweeney positions this entirely as a sort of fight for freedom from the app stores. Now, I point out the size of Epic because it's not exactly a tiny company. I mean, arguably Electronic Arts is bigger than them, but even they only had revenues of $5 billion in 2019. So Epic's about as big as game companies come. But of course, everything's a dwarf next to Apple, who had revenue of $265 billion in 2019, so 66 times more. And in August of 2020, hit a market capitalization of $2 trillion, making it the largest company in the world by market cap. Now, from a simple contract law perspective, Epic Games is in the wrong here. They violated the App Store agreement. But on August 17th, Apple upped the ante. They announced that the Epic Games developer account for Apple was going to be shut down on August 28th. And that didn't just affect Fortnite, but any game that Epic worked on, including the Unreal Engine. Now, the Unreal Engine is used by thousands of games on iOS. And so if Epic can't maintain the Unreal Engine and iOS makes an update that needs a patch for the Unreal Engine, all those games are going to break. So on August 23rd, Epic filed a court complaint saying that Apple was using overbroad retaliation by terminating the account. And Microsoft filed an amicus brief to the court supporting Epic's position, saying that they too had games dependent on the Unreal Engine, and this was an unreasonable response. The next day, the court responded with a temporary restraining order preventing Apple from blocking Epic's Games development account. But it doesn't require them to return Fortnite to the store, but that the developer account should remain active. A few days later, on August 28th, Apple does terminate the Epic Games developer account, but only for Fortnite. So the Unreal Engine is protected. Now, on September 4th, Epic then filed an injunction to get Fortnite back into the App Store and to get the Fortnite developer account restored. Apple then countersued on September 8th for breach of contract, and then a few days later said it would not allow Epic to reapply for the App Developer program for the Fortnite account for at least a year, thereby representing potentially billions of dollars in losses for Epic Games. And the first hearing to actually deal with the complaint is going to be September 28th. But the chances that Epic Games is going to win this are virtually none. I mean, you can try and play this as a David and Goliath story, but ultimately David's a billionaire too. These are big companies with a lot of money. And the approach that Epic took makes no sense. If you're actually looking to change things, in US law, it makes more sense to pursue a class action lawsuit. That Epic should be rounding up a bunch of other developers that depend on the App Store to go into court together to show that Apple's burden of the App Store is extreme and unreasonable, and that it should be not applied to anyone else. But that's not what Epic did. And in the end, that would have just been a long court battle, as all class action lawsuits are. But at the same time, Apple's doing their very best to seem like the bully, constantly escalating this situation. And I don't think that it's necessary. Fortnite represents the majority of the income for Epic Games. And at least half of all players play on iOS and Mac OS. So if they just left the app out of the store, within a few months, Epic really has no choice but to come back to the table. So I don't see why they're escalating. They just look bad. But that's not enough to actually win in court. And it begs the question, why? What are you hoping to achieve? Nobody needs any money here. Apple's a wealthy company. Epic's a wealthy company. The 30% doesn't make or break anything. Maybe there's other forces involved. And it occurs to me that 40% of Epic shares are owned by Tencent. They bought them back in 2012, before the Fortnite wave or anything like that, which means the Chinese government has a significant interest in Epic Games. And when you look at what's going on with the US government in TikTok right now, it makes me wonder if this might also be supported by the Chinese government, that disrupting the darling company of the US market, Apple, by allowing them to do stupid things, essentially, and cause trouble, also impacts their business in China. And at the same time, maybe puts a little pressure on to sort of deal with the situation in TikTok. I think there's more going on than we realize here, but we don't know for sure. And I, for one, am paying close attention. Thanks so much for your question. Really great to chat with you all again. I miss you terribly. Can't wait for a chance to get back down in Australia. See ya.
Sorry. All right. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that. Thank you, Richard Campbell, for that. We're very lucky that you will give us your insights into that. And put your comments down. I'd love to know if you think he's on the money or he's not. Everything seems to come back to China these days, doesn't it? So it's kind of funny. So I'd like to introduce you to Chris Clement. And Chris is a very experienced full stack dev, but more the front end JavaScript side, and 40% back to the .NET Core backend side of things. Chris, how have you enjoyed the last months living and breathing Blazor?
Well, I enjoyed the ride, and I also enjoy a couple of new experience. Like it just feels different, It's always enjoyable learning new things.
And how many people on your team developing this?
We have a 3-core team, but we have like one member come off and on and go.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And coming from a JavaScript world into Blazor, was it stressful?
Surprisingly, not really. Like because we are currently using the .NET 5 preview, like a lot of fancy features from .NET 5.
Yeah.
So it feels actually. I'm expecting to be like a lot of blockers, but then it turns out it's not as much blockers as I thought of. And yeah, it's a really nice experience overall.
Okay. All right. Tell me something that you miss from JavaScript.
Well, I miss the, for example, because JavaScript has a lot of, history has been longer than Blazor. There's a lot of libraries that you can just directly use to do this and to do that. But in Blazor, well, you can still use JavaScript in Blazor, but then you have to do the workaround to make the JavaScript work. So yeah, it's something I miss.
Okay. Oh, cool. And this project was a massive Silverlight project that we did many years ago. Did you choose Blazor because of Silverlight? Is that the main reason, or was there another reason?
No, it's not because of the Silverlight, but when we do when we proposed the solution earlier, we also take a look at their particular skill set. this particular client, they have a lot of C# developers. So obviously when you have a proficient in one skill and just because you want to start using like modern JavaScript, then you can't just relearn all of those JavaScript. So basically, that's why we think Blazor is actually a good choice for them.
Okay.
And yeah, because it's on C#.
And what made you decide to talk tonight about Fluxor?
Yeah, because my main background is from front-end developers, and Redux is actually pretty popular in like in JavaScript, but for a backend developer, we may not. Some of the guys might not even heard of Redux before, and just want to share like, hey, this is a great tool, and we can definitely apply this to Blazor, so we can make the workflow even faster and easier to expand.
And you've introduced this to the client C# developers. How did that transition go?
This is a full new project, so there's no transition yet, but we'll see about that.
Okay, so that's next. So they should be watching tonight to implement it, should they?
Yes, that's it's a good resource, like new learning, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, let's kick it off, and I'm very keen to see it.
All right, so I have the screen, yeah, just to double check.
Yeah, we can see you.
All right,
Crystal
awesome.
clear. That beautiful logo all in purple.
Yes, in purple because Blazor is purple. All right, so hello everyone. Let me just ask you guys the first question, really. Have you ever felt so frustrated working in a large and complex web app, and all of it is because you just want to add this one small feature, but then you realize that you don't know where to begin with because everything is just so interconnected and so massively complex. So today I will show you one of my favorite tools, which is Redux pattern. So with Redux pattern, we can solve and deconstruct a large and complex application into a scalable building blocks. I will specifically talk about Blazor WebAssembly because it's the hottest thing at the moment for .NET world. And my name is Chris Clement. I'm a software architect at SSW. You can reach me in my Twitter at Chris Clement, or you can also reach me in my GitHub, github.com/ChrisClement. Couple of facts about me. I'm an electronics engineer, so you can say that I'm kind of like a half-breed between hardware and software. And also, I've been programming since 2007 with using the old legacy VB6. It's actually pretty surprising that in just 13 years, we now have like a lot of technologies. When we compare all of those technologies with VB6 back then, it's just so there's a lot of improvements. And also, I am a front-end guy. My main tools are Angular, React, and Blazor. I'm keen to learn Vue, by the way, because it's also another hot thing in the market. And also, I am a gaming enthusiast. So currently playing Final Fantasy 14. So if you guys love gaming, feel free to reach me out and we can have a nice talk. All right. So I will start off the talk by talking why Redux and what is Redux, basically. And then I'll continue on like showing a couple of nice Redux libraries in Blazor. And then I'll move on into, I'll do like a little demo how to use Fluxor in Blazor. Finally, we will close the talk later on in the conclusion section. All right, so why Redux? I'll give you an example. So this is an example of you have a view that is consists of one edit button, and you also have a form. So we have two states. The first one is a Boolean editable. So that will indicate whether we want to show the toggle edit button or not. Then when we press the toggle edit button, it will update the isEditing Boolean. So isEditing indicates that the current form is in edit mode. And then We also want to populate the form data with a pre-filled form information. And finally, we have a submit button that will submit the form. Okay, we also want to disable the submit button if it's editing. So we have to check from the state whether it's editing or not. All right, that sounds simple and straightforward. But then a couple of sprints later, there's a new requirement. So we want to add an async text validator based on the form input. So now we have to disable the submit button based on the form data. So now, as you can spot on the problem, if we keep adding more and more things into this particular page, it will get even more complex with all of the mutation happening, and you don't know which one modify which one. So you have to keep track. Where does it begin and where does it end? And imagine if you have a new member in your team, then they need to work on this project. So it's really hard to keep follow. Basically, you can 100% agree that he or she will spend a bit of nice time trying to figure out what's going on in this page. So let's redo this with Redux pattern. So first, we have the same state on the left side. We have the editable and is editing, but I also have the two more value there, which is enable submit and also form data, which I will show you why I have this two additional value there. And then on the right side, I have the toggle edit button, I have the form, I have the submit button. I also have this async validator on the right side. Okay, so what's the difference? The difference is I will put the state in a store. So store in Redux is just a simple object that holds the state, and it also has a couple of bits methods that we can call the store. Like in JavaScript, there's a subscription, but in C# we don't not using subscription. But that's a huge topic, so feel free to reach me out later for a better explanation on in-depth explanation of that one. But let's just focus on this example. So this state over here, this will solely drive the view. Like if it's editable, then we show the button. If it's editing, we show the form. And if it's enable submit, then we will enable the submit button. And also we want to pass the form data to the async validator. So if you notice that the arrow is one way, so how do we update the state? So in Redux pattern, when you want to update the state, you have to launch a thing called actions. So action could be like toggle edit, which indicates that you want to toggle the edit, or it can also be like a form update that you want to says that you want to update the form, or it also can be a form submit actions that you want to submit the form. And this action over here, it will be passed on to the store, and we have another component in the store called reducer. So reducer, this is a pure function that takes two input. The first one is your action, and the second one is the previous state or the current state. Like before we updated, this is the current state. So depending on your action, your fired action, and also your parameter within your action, and based on the previous state, this reducer will update the next state. So that's the Redux pattern simplified. So there's a couple of things I want to highlight there. So the first one is, as you see, everything is a unidirectional data flow. So you can be 100% confident that there will be no accidental mutation happening. Everything has to go through action. And that is also because everything has to go through actions, you can track every single change. You can see the whole actions in a historical order. And like this particular action mutate this particular state and so on. So everything is tracked. And then next one, because we're using pure function, the state change will always be deterministic. There's no third party or external factor that will change the state that we don't want, because pure function will only accept two inputs. And it also will make this easier to test. And lastly, we have a single source of truth. When you want to look a particular, let's say you just go into the project and you open the project, you want to find out where is the thing that disables submit button. You can just go to the store because this is a single source of truth. Everything is there. All right. So in summary, my most favorite benefit in Redux pattern is, first of all, it's a unidirectional data flow, no accidental mutation. Next one is a single source of truth. So you can take a peek at the state and then you know what exactly in your view. And also has a deterministic state change. So it's very easy to do unit tests. And lastly, which is one cool thing that we can do, is time traveling. So I will show you guys later on in my demo. But basically, because I've already, if you want to change the state, you have to fire an actions, right? So because you keep the track of every actions, you basically can go to a particular slice in time, and you can see what's happening in the view at that particular time. I'll show you this one later on. It's a really cool feature. I like it. All right. I've shown you why Redux and what is Redux. So now I'll show you a couple of libraries with Blazor. So I did a bit of research and I found these nice libraries. The first one is Blazor Redux. It has a 416 stars, but it was last updated 2 years ago. So I reckon this library is very popular back then when the Blazor just launched. But then for some reason, they have stopped updating it. So you might want to keep that in mind if you use this library. It might not be compatible with the latest .NET because it wasn't updated. It was updated a long time ago. Next one is called Blazor State. So Blazor State is, it has 14 stars. It's not much, but it was updated quite recent, more recent than the previous one, which is 9 months ago. And also the third one, we have a thing called Blazor Dash State. That was this was developed by Time Warp Engineering. It has 163 stars, and it also been updated recently. One more fun fact about this one: they actually made the dispatcher to follow Mediator. So if any of you is a fan of Mediator, then you might want to try this library because it's using Mediator under the hood. And lastly, my favorite is called Fluxor. It has 169 stars, and it was last updated 15 days ago, as per 13 September 2020. All right, so why do I love Fluxor? The first one, because it was actively maintained. I'm using Fluxor in my real life project, and we have an issue a month ago. And we raised an issue in their GitHub page, and they are very active, and they solved the issue within just 1 day. So kudos to those guys. They're pretty awesome. And the next one, they also use vanilla Redux terminologies like actions, reducers, state, and effects. So if you're new to Redux pattern, then if you want to find a reference in online, then it's very beneficial to have like a vanilla term. So you don't only get the reference to this particular library, but you also get the blog post for even like React and Angular, which under the hood is everything is Redux. And the third one, it has Redux DevTool extension, which is a really powerful extension in Chrome if you want to debug a Redux-enabled application. You can pick into the state. You can look at the action history. You can also do the time traveling using this extension. I'll show you guys later on about this extension. And lastly, Fluxor works with .NET 5. So in my project, we use a .NET 5 Preview 8. And this evening, I also see that this also runs on .NET 5 RC1. So I think Fluxor is they support the latest .NET 5. So I'm keen to try the RC1 in depth, see if it's 100% work with RC1. All right. So I've shown you guys what and why Redux. Now I'll show you guys a couple of libraries with Blazor. And now I am going to do a bit of demo how to use Fluxor in Blazor WebAssembly. All right. So now, as you can see, I have a blank workspace. Let me just clear it. Now I want to create a new .NET project. So I'll do .NET new Blazor WebAssembly. And then doing the restoring and so on. All right, done. So now I'm going to run this nice little command in .NET watch run. So this will create, this will continually monitor the files and will build the .NET, the Blazor app for you. Well, so if you have a new change in your file, then it will rebuild it and show, refresh it for you, which is super awesome. All right. So in my screen right now, I have the scaffold Blazor app. So we have the home, we have a counter, we have the fetch data. That is the normal Blazor template. But one page that I particularly want to talk about is the counter. So this is a simple page, really. So when you click the Click Me button, it will increase the count by 1. But if you go back and then go back to this page, then it will just reset the count. Basically, just store the number of count in locally in the component. So what I want to do in this demo is I want to transform this page to use Redux pattern. So if we go back, I'll show you we want to do something like this. So I will create a counter state, which is the state with the integer count. And this count will be displayed in our counter.razor page. And then whenever we click the Click Me button, we will launch an action called add counter. And this add counter will then we send this to the store to the reducer. And this counter reducer will read the previous state of count. Let's say I have the count of 2, then it will read it and it will add it by 1. So now the next count is 3. And this count is the count 3, it will be displayed in counter.razor. That's pretty simple. All right, so let's do it. First of all, I am going to install the Fluxor library. I have a cheat sheet over here. I'm going to copy this one, .NET add package Fluxor Blazor.web. So let's wait for it doing its thing. All right, and also going to install the optional extension called Redux DevTools. So this NuGet package will enable us to connect the Fluxor with the Chrome Redux DevTool extension. All right, so now we have those libraries installed. The next one we need to install the glue, which is the JavaScript file for the Fluxor. I'm going to copy that. Then I am going to open a Visual Studio Code in my demo folder. And I'm going to look for index.html, which the entry point of a static web page. I am going to paste it there. So now I have my index.html will load this index.js file at the beginning, which is just right after Blazor WebAssembly.js file. So next one is I want to go to the app.razor. We want to install the glue for the Fluxor. So if we load this Fluxor component in the app.razor, this Fluxor component will automatically initialize the store for you. Although you can also do that explicitly if you if you want to more control of your code, you can just using add code, and then you can add your uninitialized async, and then you can just initialize the store manually. But for the demo purpose, I'll put this one so it will be much simpler. Okay, so now we have the JavaScript, we have the initializer. Next one is we need to go to the program.cs, and then we need to actually add Fluxor. So Fluxor has a this nice add Fluxor method that comes from the services. So with this add Fluxor button, add Fluxor method, the thing that we want is we can instruct the Fluxor library to scan the assemblies. So the Fluxor libraries will scan your assemblies for your reducer, for your select, for your state, and for your reducer state and actions. So it will do the automatic scan for you, so you don't have to manually add it to the store manually. So I am going to pass the assembly of my program. Type of a program. Oh, misspelled there. .assembly. All right. And at the same time, I want to also add the Redux DevTool using the use Redux DevTool method there. So this is purely optional. So if you want to go production and you don't want to support, you don't want your end user to open the Redux DevTool, then you can just not run this command using the if debug, for example. So, yeah, so it's a pretty versatile on which way you want to use it. Okay, so now once we have this one installed, the next one, if we go back to the slide, let's make the counter. Sorry, let's make the counter state, and then we can move on to making the action, and finally we can create the reducer. So now I'm going to create a new folder called store, and then this one I will create a new file called counterstate.cs. So putting all the boilerplate code, and then this is where I want to use the shiny C#9 features. So I'm going to use public record counter state. So record is a new modifier in C#9 that allows you to create an immutable data class. So it's really powerful, and it opens a lot of options that we can use the record for. So I'll show you guys later on why I want to use record. So for now, I am going to add public int count. So public getter, and also a new modifier called init. This init will make the count creatable only at when you in the construction time, but otherwise you can't change you can mutate the count, which is what we want in the state. It's in Redux state is immutable. We want that one. So, and the next one is the glue for Fluxor. So we want to create a new class called counter feature state, and this will extend feature. This is so feature, and the underneath is counter. So feature is a Fluxor class that will when you remember that we have a scan assemblies in the program.cs, it will search for this feature and then automatically add it to the state. So you don't have to do additional configuration. So now let's just implement the class. So we have to implement these two methods. The first one is getName. The getName will, when we supply this, then it will set the name for our counter state. So for now, I don't like hard-coded strings, so I'm just going to use the name of counter state. And the second method that we have to implement is to set up the initial state. So I am going to return a new counter state with count equal to 0. All right, so we now have the state. Actually, I can show you. We can quickly check whether the state is there or not. So opening my Chrome developer tools, and because I have the plugin called Redux DevTool extension installed, now I have a new tab called Redux. I'm going to go there. Then this is the Redux DevTool. So now I want to click the state. Oh no, we don't have the state. Why? Because the Blazor somehow it doesn't, the .NET Watch Run doesn't compile because we add the counter state, it doesn't compile it yet. So that's a bit weird thing from .NET Watch Run. So nice trick that I have in my hand is I can run touch command, and I point it to my CS proj. So basically, it just triggers this the .NET Watch on my left console, so it will rebuild the whole app. All right. So let's check. There you go. Now we have counter state. So this is counter state, the one that we supply with name of counter state, and we also have the current state. Okay, now let's continue. We have the state, now we're going to make the action, the add counter action. Let's go. I'm going to add a new file called addCounter.cs. The boilerplate code. And then I want to also use the record add counter. For now, I don't think I need an additional parameter to the action, so I just leave it as an empty one. So now we have the action. And then next one, we have to create the reducer. So this action can change the counter state. So now I will create a counter reducer. We have boilerplate code. And then now let's make the reducer. As I said before, reducer is a pure function. So the way Fluxor set it up, so we have to put it under a public static class. And what do I counter reducer as the name? And then let's Fluxor allows you to create a reducer for each action. So we want to create a reducer that will react to the add counter action. So I will create a public static method, and the return type of reducer is obviously the counter state, because it will read the previous state and action and will return the state. So the name I choose will be on add counter, so it's intuitive because we want to change based on add counter action. So the input one is the state, and the input two is add counter, which is the action. Now, to make this method discoverable by Fluxor, we need to slap in one attribute called reducer method. So from the Fluxor library. So now, this is why I want to use the record type and C#9, because with the record type, you can do this. You can return the same state, but with only a specific field that you want to change. So imagine if your state has 3 fields, you don't have to go like a new counter state and then you copy each one of your attributes. You just need to pass in the one thing that you need to update. So for example, this count, I will read the previous count. So now when I use state with, this will duplicate the state with the count parameter to be this value. So the other field value will remain the same. The one thing that changes is only the count. And one thing that is nice with this one is that this will duplicate the record, the data class, without any connection to the previous, the original class, which is very powerful. Just a simple reference copy is the whole copy. So if you're a TypeScript developer, then it might be pretty similar to do something like ... state and then comma count equal to state.count. So you can say it's pretty equivalent there. All right, so now we have the action, we have the reducer, and we also have the state. So everything should be working now, except that we need to go to the counter.razor, the actual page the actual component that rendering this page, and we need to hook this to the Fluxor. So first step is we need to inherit Fluxor component. So that's coming from fluxor.blazor.web.components.fluxor component. So by inheriting from this particular component, Fluxor will take care of updating, to instruct the Blazor to update the page whenever there's a state change. So you don't have to do it manually, which is really awesome. And then the next one is we want to inject a couple of things. I'm going to use using and then Fluxor, so we don't have to type a lot of things. So the first thing you need to inject is the I state, which is it will be injected with the counter state, and then we can use the value within the counter state in this template. So now I'm going to inject that with demo.store.counterState. Let's name it as counter state. And so now with this counter state, we can replace the current count in. Instead of representing a field, now we just use like a simple getter. So we can directly grab the value from the counter state. So this count is the one that we have in the counter state. See there, demo.store.counterState. And the next one, we want to fire an action when we increment the count. So now we need to inject second thing called iDispatcher. So iDispatcher is the service that will dispatch an action for you, and it will trigger the appropriate reducer to update the state. So let's name it dispatcher. And we can just replace the current count, this one, with dispatcher.dispatch, and then we pass in the action that we want to fire. So that is new demo.store.addCounter. All right, so I think everything now is hooked up. So let's save it and then go back to our Blazor app. Okay, so now let's click on this one. Ooh, oh no, what happened? As you see in the dev tool, we can see that the action is being fired. So whenever I click this, it will add a new entry. So that is the action that we fired. But for some reason, the numbers there doesn't add up. So what happened? So let's pick at the diff here. So diff is the difference between the previous state and the current state. And as you can see, it says the states are equal. So whatever we do back there, it doesn't change the state. So now what we need to do, let's take a peek at the counter reducer. So reducer is, remember, reducer is a pure function that changes the counter state. So this is the issue. So as you see, when I do return state, I only pass in the previous value of count. I didn't actually add it by 1. So now let's fix that. I've added this +1 and then save it. And then let's go back to our demo app. Oh, I don't think it has built. So let's go back to this one and force trigger. All right, so it has rebuilt. So let's try it again. Hopefully it will work this time. Click. There you go. Now we have add counter action. You can see in the right side of the screen, the count changed from 0 to 1. Then let's just click more and more. It keeps adding the count more and more and more, which is basically the function of this page. Super awesome. All right, so the final thing I want to show you in the demo is the time traveling. So you see this slider over here? This is the historical, this is the time slider for your action. So if I just click, I just drag this one to the middle, and it will change. You see the current count is 16. And if you see the current state, the count is 16. If we go back to the bit for the future, then the count state is now 26. And you see the page view is 26. So with Redux, you can do this time travel. So you can just click next, and then you can also go back. And you can, as you can see, the page view is actually reflecting the state that we have. So this is a super powerful tool. I like it. So if you want to take a look at your previous state, you can do it. It's easy to do with the Redux. All right. So that is the end of the demo. Just one more thing I want to remind you about the Redux. The first thing is that you can have Redux pattern without using a library. So the library is a nice tool that you can use to reduce the amount of boilerplate code. You don't have to add this, and this, but it doesn't stop you from using a Redux pattern. You can always have a simplified Redux pattern because, as I've shown you before, Redux pattern, the powerful thing in Redux pattern is actually the unidirectional data flow and also the single source of truth, which you can implement it anywhere. You don't have to use library, but it's nice to have, so you don't have to write all the boilerplate codes. And the next one is Redux is just another tool in the box. I can't stress this enough. Redux is just a tool. So there's a couple of tools out there that may fit your solution better than Redux. So please, before you blindly use Redux, try it out. Consider the Redux's plus and minus. Like it has a deterministic state change, for example. That's the benefit. and it also enforces the data flow. It may be a benefit, it may be not a benefit. And it also introduced an extra code overhead, as I've shown you in the graph earlier, and also in my demo. You have to create like an action reducer and all of those things that you don't need it if you don't use Redux. So and consider these facts, and then you can decide whether this is a good tool that you want to implement your project or not. All right. So what we've learned today, I've shown you guys a Redux, which is a great pattern to be considered. Also shown you guys a cool C#9 features, which is the record and width duplication. And also I've shown you how to add Redux in C# in Blazor WebAssembly. It's very easy to set up. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. If you, I put the code in my GitHub, so if you want to check the source code out, you can just hit me on GitHub and on Blazor with Redux repository. And you can also scan this QR code if you have a QR code scanner. And if you have any question, feel free to reach me at my Twitter, Chris Clement, and then we can have a chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That was fantastic. Yes. Yes. Fantastic.
Great, thank you.
I really like that. So thank you so much. I might just switch over to my machine just so everyone can see the QR code so they can give you some feedback. Guys, be harsh. Give him some feedback. Give him some comments. He will be doing this session again, so you can only get better with feedback. And while you're scanning that QR code, guys, I'm going to ask Chris a few questions that I'm just curious about. And Chris, to answer these questions, if you need to switch back to your own computer, just request control again.
Oh, yeah, can you do that again? Sorry. I think I missed, clicked the wrong button.
No, look, just leave it on here unless you need it. But I'm curious, do you prefer to for your Blazor development to be in VS Code or Visual Studio?
At the moment, VS Code is kind of work in most of the cases, but I've also experienced a bit of where VS Code just draw a wiggle red line under everything in my .razor component. So in that case, then I have to switch to the Visual Studio. But otherwise, I like Visual Studio Code better because it's lightweight.
Okay, so I might ask that question again because I didn't realize that you were going to say both. What percentage of your time doing Blazor development are you in VS Code versus Visual Studio?
I think it's close to 60% on VS Code and 40% on Visual Studio.
Okay. Oh, cool. And regarding the, what you did tonight, that code, if you were to compare doing the same thing in Angular or React, do you have to write more or less code?
It's pretty much the same because all I wrote is just a reducer. You need that in Angular. State you need that in Angular or React. You also need the action anyway. So pretty much the same amount of code.
Right.
And with the C#9 features, actually, it become pretty similar. I imagine if you don't have C#9, you have to write more code because you have to duplicate the state.
Okay. And in your real client project, to do this job that you're doing in Blazor, are you writing more or less code than if you had done this project in Angular or React?
Well, talking about Redux, it's pretty much the same amount of code. But yeah, as I said earlier on, there's a couple of things in Blazor that doesn't work yet. So I have to do like a workaround using JavaScript to trigger something.
Right.
So yeah, eventually it's a bit more code, but it's not that much.
Okay. And are there any productivity improvements that the Blazor team could add to make your life easier?
I think they pretty much already have everything in the roadmap. For example, like in the RC1 they just released yesterday, they have the JavaScript isolation. So if you want to have a JavaScript local to only one component, you can do that. Otherwise, you will pollute the window. But one thing that I would really love to have is the SCSS support. So that is the like an enhanced CSS. So for front end, it's pretty powerful tool, and at the moment Blazor only supports CSS. So
right.
Yeah.
How important is hot reload to you?
I guess it depends on the size of the project. If the project is if it has a lot of screens, then you don't want to you don't want to refresh it and then navigate back to your old page just to check the code. You want that hot reloading. But I guess for a small project with a couple of screens, then it doesn't really matter have hot reload.
Okay, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now this code, this Fluxor, is this in your client project that you and the other SSW devs are using? Is it in the project now?
Yes.
It is.
Yes, it's in the project now.
Okay.
Yes.
And you plan on introducing it to the client developers when you hand over the project later, do you?
Yep, definitely.
And do you think they're going to be freaked out by this, or they're just used to the patterns in Angular, so that's all cool?
Actually, I'm not sure about the whether they use this one in Angular, because as I said, Redux is just a tool. So it's not like it's not baked into Angular, so they might not use it.
They do. I can tell you. I happen to know they do use Redux in Angular, and they know it well. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should be walking the park.
And okay, that's good. And how much of an improvement has the C# 9 record types made to your code cleanliness?
With the record type, is actually, yeah. So I think I can go back to the code and see this particular code. So in C# you can just duplicate the code, right? So in my current state, you only have one field. But imagine if you have like 10 fields that you have in your state, then without the record type, then you have to copy it manually. Then it will become a massive lines of code just doing nothing but replicating the previous value.
Right.
So I can say it actually cleans up the code, maybe 80% of the code.
Oh wow, 80% of the code. That's phenomenal.
In the reducer, anyway.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris, for putting that together. Thank you for all those that are watching. We're going to hand over to JK, but if you do want to give Chris any feedback, you can go to the ssw.com.au homepage, and there is a link there to give him feedback. So, JK, let's hand over to you. And what made you decide to write this talk tonight about any framework core query tags?
So the reason why I wanted to do this talk is because I told a lot of my clients and friends about how they need to worry about how they make EF core queries and how they can debug them, find them in the logs and stuff like that. But I never end up actually writing a blog and a video for it. So I just said, okay, enough people have asked about me, enough people have issues about this, and they don't even know that, they can fix those issues just by knowing where they're coming from. So hopefully this is going to help them out. Right,
awesome. And when you are using these query tags mostly, are you in SQL Server side of things trying to optimize SQL Server or something else?
So there are a couple of things. It's not always that you want to optimize SQL Server. It might also be that you're actually executing more queries than you expected. Maybe an old feature that you thought that was disabled is still enabled. Or if you're using an older EF core, EF core, say 2.0, 2.1, the queries might be very inefficient because you're abusing the select or wait clause. And this tool allows you to find those issues.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, let's kick it off, sir. I'm very excited to hear this.
All right, so welcome, everyone. Hope that you had a great night so far. So I'm going to talk about EF core query tags and logging. But first, a little bit about myself. I am Jernej Kavka, but you can just call me JK. You can follow me on Twitter, GitHub, my blog, LinkedIn. I lead Brisbane AI User Group. You can also see me at NDC Sydney. I'll do a workshop for AI, as well as do a AI talk on ML.net. So if you're interested about that, you can check that out. Just need to move this out. And by day, I do a lot of .NET Core, EF Core. That's my bread and butter. But at night, I really like to do cognitive services, ML.NET things, a lot of AI. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer the questions. All right, so yeah. And I'm also a VR enthusiast, and I'm super happy for tomorrow because we're getting a new Oculus Quest, which is going to be a real game changer for VR. All right, so before we move to our demos and explain what is EF Core and what is the query tags and stuff like that, I want to just let you know that what we're going to use is Serilog and Seek for logging. And if you're interested how to set it up, I already have a really good blog post about it. So if we move over here, you can check this blog post about how to set it up, and even shows you what are the differences if you forget a couple of configurations. And if you're running .NET Core 3.1, like this example I have over here, which is the demo I'm doing, you should upgrade to .NET 5. It's right now in RC1, and there's very little excuses now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade this demo by merging the pull request that I prepared earlier. So you will need to upgrade it for me. All right, and this is a little snippet from the blog post. All right, so why am I using Seek? So Serilog is used for integrating into the Microsoft login system, so we can gather logs from different areas and then spread it out to, say, application insight, files, Seek, and stuff like that. But the reason why I like Seek, especially in local development, is because it gives me a very rich log. So over here, you can see this is just one log for one query, but I get a lot of information. And if we have all of this, what is the issues? Isn't that enough? So if we look at this log again, so we can see what query got executed. So problem solved, right? Well, we know from where it's been executed. We know the action name. But do we know actually where it's been executed? Like, imagine that this index controller is really, really big. You have a lot of code. Does this actually give you enough information to find out where this SQL query comes from? And this is where the query tags actually comes in. So what it does, it injects text in actual SQL queries. So for instance, in the code, if we add tag with, in the actual log, in the actual query, we actually get this tag. So we don't have to look up and see, okay, which EF core query looks like our SQL query, and try to figure out which line of the code it would that be matched. You can just double click this string, copy, and then search your entire project, and you'll find the exact location of the query. And you can use that from EF Core 2.2 onwards. And you can use this with .toList, async or non-async version, first or default, async or not, as well as executing raw SQL queries. But where can you use query tags? Well, stored procedures. There is a hack in 3.0 and 3.1 to make it work. I didn't manage to make it work in EF5, maybe EF Core 5. Maybe there's a way to do it, but as far as I know, in EF Core 5, you can tag it easily. And there's
JK, sorry to interrupt. It's stored procedures, just in case people think it's something different. Stored with a D.
My apologies. I'll fix that. Stored procedures. And also on insert, update, delete, we cannot inject the query tags. However, if you have these issues, there's an alternative way to do this. So Microsoft Logger is a built-in logger that you have in .NET Core for ASP.NET Core. You can use it in your console application, Blazor, even Blazor client side, funnily enough. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to essentially make a scope. So if I highlight this, what this means that everything that is inside this using has an additional context that we can then use to search this particular query. And what I mean by that is, note how we have here EF queries, and we have additional value insert tweet. If we check this into, I think I missed an image here. If we look at the log, you can see over here. Ooh, one image missed. I'll show you later then. I missed one slide. So what we should have seen is an additional column where it says we have a property EF queries with value insert tweets. So the good thing about Microsoft Logger is that it's built in .NET Core. You can even use it in .NET Framework. You can actually log whatever you like, and you can even log things that you cannot directly access with code. So essentially, what I'm going to show you in demo is if you have a stored procedure somewhere hidden in a third-party library, you can actually add a log context to that. All right, so here is an example of no additional context in a log. So how can we add this? So here we have the code that I showed earlier. Here's the missing slide. And here is the EF query with insert value. All right, so let's go to the demo, and I'm going to show you how you can implement this. So let me switch to Visual Studio. So what I'm having here is the home controller and the index action. And what I do is, based on the log type we selected, we are executing different actions that will result in different logs. So I'm going to run this. So this is how it looks like. And what we see here is an example. What happens when we do this kind of query with no logs? So I'm going to run this query. Now, there's no difference here, but what we can do is we can go to seek. I can refresh this. And with a little bit of digging, we can see here 1945. I can expand this. And you can see here that we ran this query, select TID. But what you can see, the same problems as before. We only know from which action it was executed, and this action can do a lot of different things. And what was the request path? So not really a lot of information. And to make things a little bit easier for a little bit later, I'm going to do filter by type. So I'm not only going to be able to see this type of logs, and what I'm also going to do is I'm going to filter it from now on. So seek allows me to quickly do filtering without too much fuss. So I'm going to move over here, and if I scroll down a little bit lower, what we can see, there is an example of how we insert a tweet into a database. without logs. So if I execute this, go back to seek, refresh this, we can again see insert query, but again, not enough context to know from where it's coming. And this is where we come to logging with query tags. So you can see here, if I run this with tag with tweets, I can run this, go to seek, refresh. What I can do now is copy this, go to Visual Studio, go Control-Shift-F, and say, I want to find this. And now, behold, we have here tag with, I can double click, and we have the query. So I didn't actually need to go and look through the code and trying to figure out, okay, if I go roughly where the application should be going, I might be able to find a query that looks like the SQL query. I can just look up the exact string that was generated by the log. So you can see if this would be a problem, I would find it in like 10 seconds. Now, what happens is if we don't have access to a method, like for instance, in this case, let's imagine we don't have access to get tweets. We can use begin scope. So what this means is if I execute this code, we won't be able to find this method based on the query tag. But if we go to the logs, we will be able to see EF queries and we'll be able to see get tweets. So now I'll be able to go back to Visual Studio, do Control-Shift-F, search for it, and now I look for this using. Now I did a little bit shorthand implementation. So if I zoom into this, you can see it's just the same code as in the demo. But what you can see here is if you have a code that you cannot access, but you want to add additional context, you can do this. And if you're interested, there's a couple of demos over here that you can look through, try out things. This demo is designed for you to be able to play around, change the queries, see what happens when the log happens, how they've been logged into Seek, so you can really understand how EF core works behind the scenes. And also you can try out and see if you can use the Microsoft Logger with the begin scope to log things that you generally wouldn't be able to. Well, not really log, but add additional context to understand what is happening. So we have here run store procedures and even combinations. So this is one of my favorite way of logging. So what I have here is I'm actually logging with scope, but I'm also using tag with. That means that when I execute this query, I'm actually going both contexts over here. So the reason why you might want to do both is one, if you have SQL Profiler, you're going to see this common, right? However, if you want to have a consistent way to find all of the queries and understand what they're doing, this is better because you can then search either for specific query or you can search for a group of queries with this string, or you can just say, give me all of the queries, for instance, that do not have these EF queries because they might be a problem. So if I go back to Seek, I have actually written a little code. So if I do EF queries, I think it's not null. You can see here that I get only one result and it shows me only one. But if I say, find me everything that is null, I think just one equal now. Is null? Ah, yeah. So over here, it finds a lot of things. But what I'm going to simplify it a little bit more is I'm going to take this query, find, and I'm going to say end is null. So now this little query over here is finding all of the EF core logs that actually weren't specifically scoped by me. So then I can say, okay, is this a query that I was expecting to run or not? And what should be doing? And then if it's not, I can try to find it and try to scope it. So the next time, if this causes issues, I can find it easily and fix it. All right, so this is for the demo. So I kind of hinted on which one to use when. So when you want to use query tags is every time. So if you can use it, use it. It allows you to do more accurate logging. It's even visible in SQL Server Profiler. And generally speaking, it doesn't do much performance hit. It's basically just adding a little string in the SQL statement. And for log context, if query tags are not supported, use this so that you can at least know what's happening. When you're batching queries and you want to know which ones are batched together, remember log contexts can actually be, you can actually have multiple log contexts with different property names. So you're not limited to just one. I personally use log context to log everything. So if there's an issue, I can actually say, okay, the issue have happened with this feature, so I can filter by this property. And then I can drill down until I found this specific problem just by understanding how I have logged everything and how they group together. And you also want to use log context if you want to have log consistency. So if you're logging a couple of queries with query tags and a couple of queries with log context, it's hard to pull them together. But if you use query logs in both of the cases, you can then use much more efficient queries to find what you're looking for. All right, that's all for me. I hope you learned something new and that it's going to be useful for your work.
Thanks, JK.
Thank you so much, JK.
Thank you.
That was awesome. I might just switch over to my machine just now, just so I can let them see your tag. See the one on the right? This is JK. If you could give him some feedback, that would be fantastic. And JK, if I could ask you a couple of questions about your presentation.
Sure.
I see that you are a bit of a fan of Seq, S-E-Q, that tool.
Yes.
So do all of your query tagging, logging all work with other tools such as Application Insights and other tools?
Yes, exactly. So as long as they support structured logging, you should be able to use them just as fine as Seq.
Okay. All right, cool. And do you also, or can you use this stuff with Cosmos DB or just SQL?
That is an interesting question, and that's something that I actually missed in the demo. Is all of the demos were actually done on.
Feel to take control. Yep.
Sorry. So all of the demos were actually done in SQLite.
Oh, wow.
So you're not just bound to a SQL Server. I actually missed one little demo, which is this one, stored procedures.
Yes.
It tells you that SQLite is not supported. And then what is the point is that you can quickly switch to SQL Server and you get the same experience as with SQLite. So as long as EF Core is actually giving us some logs and it's supported by query tags, you should be able to use it. Whether Cosmos DB is included in that, I unfortunately don't know. I haven't tried it yet.
Right.
Yeah, we usually use it quite directly with some of the clients because of the performance reasons.
Yep.
But we are thinking about using it with EF Core with some of the other clients.
Right. Okay. Do you use Cosmos DB in any of your projects?
I'm using it right now for one of the client, actually the same one that Chris is working with Blazor.
Yep.
And it looks really interesting. You don't have to worry about performance that much.
Right.
And because we know that there are going to be a lot of transactions going on, a lot of queries and a lot of storing in the database, we know that we can actually solve the problems on the Cosmos DB side rather than trying to find complicated solutions on the API side.
Right. Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with William Leonberg's talks about spend ops, but could he be using this technique as well?
Yeah, we are using the spend ops in the current project that I was talking about.
Okay.
And yes, I believe he actually started using it. So
right.
But I need to check with him.
Okay, cool. And how much time has this saved you from finding bad queries compared with, just the manual looking through of SQL Profiler?
So this probably saved me days. So one of really good example is when we were doing performance testing, I could already tell the clients where the performance issues are and exactly the lines of code and what could be fixed by just looking at the application insights logs and just filtering out the bad queries. Now, in application insight, you already have that, but it's hard to link back to the application and exactly where the code is. And with this, I was just saying, yeah, it's exactly this.
Right, okay. And have you found that you just do this yourself when you go to a client to sort out this stuff, or have you sat down and taught other developers how to do this at clients?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, the main motivation was because I was explaining it to so many people, and basically I'm using this at all of the projects if possible. So yeah, I have taught a lot of people about this.
Okay. All right. Well, not only will you improve performance, but you will save money as well on Azure.
That is correct.
Okay. I would like to hand over now to the main course. Gabriel George, if you could take control, that would be fantastic. Gabe, you're going to be, you're knee deep in Angular all the time, and you're going to talk to us tonight about how to improve the performance of a huge Angular app that has a lot of components, right?
That's correct. Although this is not the main course, I think the main course has been done in the early of the talk.
Okay. All right. You're the dessert then. That's all right. We had entree,
Yes,
main, and dessert. All right. Yep. Fantastic. Now, I'm always a fan of dessert and always leave a lot of room for that. So what are we going to see? Why did you write this talk?
So basically, I've been working in so many applications, in so many enterprise level Angular applications. And despite Angular being one of the fastest, it just feels sluggish sometimes when we have massive components. So, and then I found out that, these are the few reasons that are causing this issue. So yeah, I'm just wanting everyone to know, hey, it's not that hard to fix it.
All right, cool. Let's kick it off.
All righty. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. So as I said, I'm going to talk about satisfying your performance hungry UI in Angular. So after working for a couple of years, I know in Angular, there are some main issues happening there. So there are unnecessary change detection, and their change detection is working too hard, and unterminated subscriptions. So usually these are the three main things that causes performance issue in Angular. Before we go any further, I'm going to explain myself. So I'm Gabriel George. I'm a senior software architect at SSW. You can follow me on Twitter, or you can even read my blog at devzilla.io. So I've been an enterprise Angular developer for the past 4 years. I love coffee very much. In fact, I was a barista, and I'm also a gamer like Chris, and we are currently playing together Final Fantasy 14. So if any of you actually play games, do reach to us. And in this talk, I'm going to separate it into 3 main points. So performance issues from change detection, and then how to optimize Angular change detection, and summary. Let's get started. So first thing first, what is a change detection? So in Angular specific scope, it's a hook on app and component lifecycle, which evaluates and update DOM whenever there's a change. So it's a good and a bad thing, right? It's good because if we don't have change detection, it's just not going to render anything. It's not going to change anything until you force refresh it or doing something that you shouldn't do. And when we talk about change detection, and I mentioned about unnecessary change detection, the reason I'm telling you that is every DOM interaction triggers Angular change detection. So every button click, every keyboard type, it triggers that. So this change detection just rechecks everything. However, most of our application usually just like affect small portion of the screen, right? Unless you're changing route, there's no reason for you to check the whole screen all over again. So not everything needs to be checked. And then we move to another issue. Change detection works too hard. So it's sort of similar to the previous one. And I definitely going to show you what's the difference. So in this case, change detection works too hard. It's just like Angular reevaluates everything. Angular checks everything, including functions that you have in the HTML template. So imagine if you have a computation-heavy function in the HTML, that's going to get re-triggered every time you click, every time you type. And then I mentioned that intermittent subscriptions also cause you performance issue. So I could say this is not apparent when you started a project. However, in the long run, when you start to build your application bigger and bigger and bigger, it could cause memory leak. And then it could produce unwanted behavior. Sometimes you just won't realize that you have bombarded your own web API with multiple requests because you're doing something wrong. And it could chew up memory and CPU, which why would you? So imagine you have your web application asking for a 5 gigs of RAM. That's just, it doesn't make sense. So how to fix that? Actually, that one is the easiest one. Always unsubscribe. And to know more about that, you can read that on my blog at devzilla.io. So I have mentioned to you about 3 main causes of bad Angular performance: change detection again, and subscription. So I'm going to focus more on this change detection part. All right. So we have this issue, right? Change detection. So this is when you have not everything needs to be checked. So the problem is when we talk about the change detection strategy that Angular has, it's using default. Default means any change just triggers everything, triggers the change detection again and again and again. So usually can see it under the component, and you can see inside the decorator, you have this change detection strategy, which if it's not there, it's default. If it's there, then sometimes, so it's usually falls between default and our solution on push. So this solution of on push is actually telling Angular, hey, to do a change detection on this component, you can only do it if it fits one of the 3 triggers. So 1, is if the input value or reference change. So usually if you pass your input through the parent component to the child component, it needs to have a reference change for Angular to notice that. And then changes that it happens inside the component, like you have a button click inside that component, it will trigger change detection. If you have any observable, it will trigger change detection. And lastly, this is something that most people don't normally do, but you can actually force change detection using change detector ref service. So change detection actually can not run, and this is one of the way that we can force it to run. All right, so let's get to the demo, and I'm going to show you change detection strategy, default, and on push. Okay, so I have this application, which is a to-do application, and basically this how this structured is. It's just a to-do component. Inside that to-do component, I have to-do components, which I render using ng for loop, and it just renders roughly. I think I have roughly about 200 to-dos here. All right, and then inside that to-do component, just for proof's sake, I have this get method running change detection, and basically it just returns nothing, empty string, and this is being used in the HTML using interpolation. And in this function, I do a console log change detection running from to-do component. Let's get into the code, the HTML actually, sorry. And let's have a look at this console log. So as you can see, I just started to open up this application, and it already have 800. I'm not sure if you can read it well, but it's 800 change detection running from to-do component. And now let's clear it. I'm going to edit one of the to-do component. Let's do number 3. Click once. Oh, hey, what's happening? So I have 200 change detection times 2 just by clicking one button. Okay, maybe it's not a big thing. Let's change the title to something. It's me. Hey, what's happening there? So every button click, every typing, it's just triggering change detection over and over and over again. Even though, honestly, what needs to change is just this one small component. And when we save it, only this component should change. Okay, how to fix it? Very straightforward. So we know the behavior that this to-do component shouldn't change if there's no new input. There's no input change. So we can fix it by going into the to-do component, and inside this app component decorator, we add a new line, and we do change detection, and then use change detection strategy, which is a flag, and do on push. That's it. We save it, and let's have a look again. Now we refresh. Okay, we only see 200 change detection now in comparison to 400 earlier. And now when we click on the button here, or actually let's clear it first. When we click on the button on the app to do, it only triggers once. And then when we change the title to something else, it doesn't trigger the change detection because the app to-do component knows that there's no change to that input, therefore it shouldn't change. And then when we save it out, we expect there's a change detection happening, which is happening on that application to-do component. All right. So earlier I've shown you the change detection strategy, the difference between the default and on push. And honestly, you should use onPush as much as possible. However, you need to be careful because there's only triggers that three triggers that can trigger change detection on an onPush component. All right, next one. So the problem is change detection is working too hard. And the solution is actually Angular pipe decorator. So as I said before, sometimes we just have to have this function that lives inside the HTML component. And because we know that every time we do DOM interaction, this gets reevaluated over and over again, this is where the pipe comes in. So with pipe, the value is memoized or cached. So if the input doesn't change, input reference doesn't change, therefore pipe will assume you stay the same. The value will stay the same. And to see how that works, let's get into the demo. Okay, so I have this to-do component again, but this time what I want is I want to know how many to-dos I have, and it should be put under these to-dos. And then let's go into the code. Let's go to the to-dos component. So basically what I want is just under to-dos, I want to have H5. Let's put H5 so it's a bit smaller. And basically I have this function in the TS file, which I already made, get to-dos count, which accepts to-dos array. And then let's use it in the HTML. So we use the interpolation. And then we pass to-dos inside that. All right. So basically, based on the code, you can see how I already put this console log. But if the count is 0, it should be there is no item found. If it's 1, there is 1 item found, and more than that, there are count items found. All right, save all. All right, looks great. Despite this is not being at the right place, let's fix that. So that shouldn't be inside display flex. Let's make it live by itself. This poor lonely H5. All right, there it is. We have 200 items found. However, you can see get to this count has been triggered 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And because change detection also runs every button click, every key type. Whenever you click on a button, it runs again. When you type, it runs over and over again. And how to fix that? We can implement what we call pipe. So let's make one now. So I have this pipe folder. Let's make new one. Let's call it get to-dos count.pipe to let people know it's a pipe.ts. Sounds great. And then I have this fancy Angular snippet in Visual Studio Code where you can put a dash and control space, and you can ask for like, all right, I want to make a pipe generated for you, and then let's name it get to-dos count, and name it get to-dos count. You know we are only accepting one type of value, which is a to-do model array, and we don't care about extra args, and we are returning string. Okay, let's go into that to-dos component TS. Let's copy, well, just this. We don't need the function. All right. Just for sanity's sake, let's just change that value into to-dos. And then we also need to declare this get to-dos count pipe inside the module. So let's declare it. save. And how to use it? Fairly simple. So inside the to-dos HTML, get to-dos count. So this is where we previously used get to-dos count. Remove it all. Actually, because the pipe name is the same, actually let's copy it. To-dos in the interpolation and put the pipe, and we have that underneath that get to-dos count. Let's save. So as you can see, inside this get to-dos count pipe, we still have console log. We haven't removed it. And now you can see that it only gets run once at the beginning. And then when we click on anything else, it won't retrigger because to-dos value actually remain the same. So this is very useful when you have like very computational logic. Maybe it's not as beneficial in this case, but this is something that you can always implement depending on your own use case. Alrighty, so I've just shown you how to use the pipe, and I also have shown you that pipe memorize the value as long as the input reference hasn't changed. Right. And let's go to summary. So change detection always happening regardless of UI framework, be it Angular, React, Vue, or even Blazor. They have their own kind of change detection. And then in Angular, use change detection strategy on push to prevent Angular from doing unnecessary change detection. Use Angular pipe decorator to prevent Angular to reevaluate function, especially the one that have heavy computation in the HTML template. And also, don't forget to unsubscribe. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great night.
Thank you so much, Gabe. Thank you heaps. That was awesome. I might switch over to my machine just so people can get the eval form.
Yep.
There is the eval form. Please give Gabriel, George, plenty of feedback. I think that's a great talk on Angular. And if you haven't given feedback on the other presenters, please do that as well. They only get better with your feedback. And while we're doing that, while they're scanning, I might ask you, Gabe, when you have a large Angular page and there's lots of components there, how do you find the fattest component on the page?
The fattest component on the page. This is a bit tricky. Maybe look at the lines of code first thing first.
No, really?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't
You'll
always
be
indicate
surprised.
how much process is being used by the component.
Oh, you'll be surprised. I've seen one component that has 400 lines of code, which technically can be easily be split into multiple components, smaller ones.
Ah, right. Smaller and smaller components.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Are there any scenarios where the on-push change detection causes you issues?
Yes. So I think this I have some case where this Angular project was done by a backend developer previously, and then they are not used with immutability that we usually have in Angular or any basically JavaScript languages, and they just do object mutation. So we can with object mutation, it doesn't change the reference. Therefore, on push will not trigger change detection. They'll be confused, like, why is it not triggering? And honestly, that's one of the reason why.
Right.
And therefore, you need to force it using change detector ref service.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And are you already on Angular 10?
I haven't had any project on Angular 10. We had a project with Angular 9, but I'm very excited on features on Angular 10.
Which feature?
There's one that called strict mode that making your application even stricter, saying that every function that returns, every function you need to specify if it returns void, if it returns string, object, or anything else, but it needs to be, you need to put it up. You cannot make it implicitly return something.
Right, yeah. Okay. So like linting tools type thing.
Almost like forcing you to do to type it, strongly type it.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. Now I have a curly one for you. How do you feel about all this? Like I know you are an Angular developer through and through, but how do you feel about all this chatter about Blazor? And what would you think if you were thrown on a Blazor project tomorrow? How would you feel?
Like, I think based on Chris's experience, Blazor is great if you know C#, if you're confident with C#, and then it's missing some of the feature. I think I'll be okay, honestly, because even though it's a different kind of language, it's just the mentality of doing front-end framework will help a lot.
All right. So JK, you there? I'd love to know, you got any questions for Gabe on this Angular stuff?
Yeah, I have maybe an interesting question. So for instance, I found a couple of clients that are on Angular 4, 6, 8.
Yeah.
So if they have performance issues, should they try to do what you were doing, or should they try to upgrade to Angular 10? What do you think would be the better choice for them if they could choose only one or the other?
If you're on Angular 4, upgrade. If you're on Angular 6, upgrade. If you're on Angular 8 and above, you can just use one of the optimization that I just showed you earlier. I think from 4 to 7, there are a lot of good changes, mainly on RxJS. It's a bit out of topic, but back in the day, RxJS implementation is sort of using prototype and just baking it inside your object, making things bigger and bigger. It's quite different than what we have now for starting from Angular 7 and above.
That's good.
Chris, how did you find JK's talk?
It was pretty powerful. Like I can already imagine a couple of past projects where having the query tags actually saves us time looking at particular query, because like what we can see is basically only data in app insights, right? So that's the only visibility that we have. So you need to do digging and so on and so on. But with query tags, I reckon it'll be just like a snap and then you know where it is.
All right, awesome. All right. So before I say goodnight, you got any final questions or comments?
Nah, I think everyone did a great talk tonight.
Oh, yes.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for putting all that together, guys. I know you guys are very busy on your full-time gigs and you do this at night time. And I also want to call out to the SSW TV guys. Tonight's user group came to you via the new technology in Teams called NDI. And it was only just released a week ago and they were working helter-skelter to get it all going. And it was amazing. They got a whole lot of feedback from the Microsoft team on some little features that they wanted changed, and I thought they did a wonderful job getting tonight together. So with that, also thanks to Richard Campbell for chiming in. That was fun, and we'll see who wins out of Apple and Fortnite, Epic Games. So that should be very, very interesting. It's kind of the big evil company versus another smaller big evil company. And yeah, we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, there will be very interesting because really it's very hard when the richest company in the world is trying to enforce rules where they don't want to share any of their money, hey? Whatever's happening, Apple aren't looking too good. Anyway, so with that, I might sign off. and we will see you next month. This is Adam Kogan signing off for SSW TV.